Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really compelling Dawn op-ed by academic Lalarouk Ijaz. It's titled Fear of a Woman, and it's a fascinating deep dive into the intense societal reaction to the Aurat March. We'll be looking at how social conditioning and power dynamics actually weaponize the very concept of feminism. Okay, let's dive into this. The author anchors her entire analysis on one highly provocative question. Why does a thinking woman frighten us so deeply? It's a pretty brilliant framing mechanism, honestly. Instead of just focusing on the surface-level outrage or the protest slogans, Ijaz is asking us to look inward. She wants us to examine the societal psyche and really get to the root causes of the discomfort that pops up the second women step outside traditional expectations. All right, let's get into Section 1, the word feminism. To start, Ijaz grounds her piece in some very recent, tangible events, specifically the manhandling of women associated with the Aurat March, including activist Chima Kirmani. She points out that the public reaction really reveals how the word feminism has been completely transformed. It's no longer treated as an ideology or just a political position. Instead, society literally weaponizes it. It's become this loaded curse word, shorthand for immorality, rebellion, or a total rejection of culture and faith. And what's especially striking in our analysis is the observation that this weaponized definition isn't just pushed by men. It's actually heavily internalized by many women, too, who hold on to these very narrow ideas of what goodness and femininity are supposed to look like. Which brings us to Section 2, the Cinderella conditioning. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why that word became so weaponized. The author traces this discomfort all the way back to our childhoods. Just think about the Cinderella figure. From the fairy tales we hear to the family structures we grow up in, little girls are raised on stories that constantly reward obedience, softness, and sacrifice. The idealized woman is patient and selfless, right? She's waiting for a rescue from Prince Charming rather than actively changing her own circumstances. But then you have the dangerous woman. When a woman is critical, assertive, and unapologetic, when she actually takes up public and intellectual space, she completely disrupts that fantasy. She shatters generations of conditioning about what a good woman should be, which is exactly why she's perceived as such a massive threat. And that leads to this really powerful observation from the text. The author argues that her goodness lies not in courage or intellect, but in how much injustice she can bear without retaliation. It's heavy, right? Society has traditionally measured a woman's virtue by her capacity to just quietly endure suffering. Feminism totally unsettles people because it tells women, hey, you don't need to remain helpless to be worthy. It directly challenges the idea that women have to continuously shrink themselves just to fit this exact rigid definition of virtue. Now, let's look at Section 3, the price of disruption. So the op-ed moves from psychological conditioning to the very real, very harsh real-world consequences women face for refusing to play that obedient role. It's a heavy sequence, and frankly, it's one that men are rarely forced to consider. Step 1, a woman demands equality or questions inherited structures. Immediately, Step 2 kicks in. She faces intense moral scrutiny and social isolation, often getting branded as Western or immoral. Finally, Step 3, she has to endure a damaged reputation and this exhausting constant pressure just to prove her respectability all over again. The whole system is basically designed to penalize disruption. Because of these incredibly heavy consequences, Ijaz identifies what is honestly a deep tragedy. The familiar cage begins to feel safer than freedom itself. She cites this highly evocative Urdu verse in the op-ed about becoming so accustomed to the hunter or the cage that you feel like you die if you were actually given freedom. Generations of social conditioning have taught so many women that conformity is literally the only way to survive, and that profoundly explains why some women themselves actively participate in sustaining these restrictive expectations. But as the author points out, societies do not progress through silence. Progress only happens when someone questions what everyone else just accepts. Now the text shifts to some pretty stark historical facts to demonstrate the violent stakes for Pakistani women who refuse to stay silent. Asma Jahangir, a globally recognized human rights voice, was repeatedly called a traitor. Parveen Rahman was killed for asking inconvenient questions. Sabine Mahmood was murdered for creating space for difficult conversations. Ijaz impartially presents these facts to show a clear pattern. These women were all deemed too loud and entirely too unwilling to conform. So the crucial point is this poignant reflection from the author. Society does not always recognize the women it needs until after it has silenced them. It's a very stark, sobering look at how society treats its most disruptive but absolutely necessary voices. The very women who are pushing a society forward are often the exact same ones it initially tries the hardest to suppress. Moving on to our final part, Section 4, the unfinished work. Zooming out to the broader implications here, Ijaz clarifies a really vital point. This struggle, it isn't just about the highly visible activist we just mentioned. It's about everyday realities. It's about the girl in a village school who is told her education simply matters less than her brother's. It's about the woman in a courtroom who just isn't believed. At the end of the day, it boils down to the basic right to choose and to be taken seriously. The author's making it clear that this isn't some fringe movement. It's the unfinished work of an entire nation fighting for basic dignity and human rights. Which brings us to Lalarouk Ajaz's core thesis on what this is actually all about. According to the text, feminism is the insistence that women are complete human beings, capable of thought and deserving of agency. She argues that, at its heart, it is absolutely not a rejection of culture or family or faith. It is simply a demand for basic human completeness. It's the assertion that a woman is entitled to dignity without needing to be rescued first. The real tragedy, she notes, isn't that women are demanding too much today, but that for generations they were actively taught to ask for so little. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final, totally provocative question the author uses to challenge her readers. Who benefits from women's silence? Movements like the Orit March matter because they force society to confront questions it has spent a long time avoiding. When obedience is framed as the ultimate virtue, we really have to look at the underlying power dynamics at play. Who is actually being served by that silence? It's a question that demands some deep consideration. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this fascinating material, and remember to keep questioning what you've been taught to accept.